Hello, so let's take a quick look at this. I received this as an attachment. It's the assignment 4. There's some questions about the curves and levels. So let me take a look at what we've got, just unpacking it. We have a original photo, the edited photo. We have an excess of layers at this point. Let's just check the channels. It looks like so a lot of these. I'm gonna break this off real quick to channels and layers. It looks like a number of these were created to be used, but were not used. So I would actually move these over into channels, and the process for that is pretty straightforward. I believe. Let's see if this little trick still works. You used to be able to actually click on a mask, which would load it temporarily into channels, hence why we have the italicized kayaks mask. And you could just press new. Oh wait, no, you didn't press it, you drag it to the new, and it should duplicate it. So you can just go down, and it still works. That's good. So you can just go down and copy all of these masks that are not being used on anything into the channels palette, and then you can throw them away. So we can grab like sky, and then the nice thing about doing it this way is that you get the name in it, so you don't have to worry about naming it twice. So you can go through here, and anywhere that there's just a layer mask, just drag that in the channels palette to the little icon. That'll let you get rid of it. Then you can tuck it away someplace a little more useful. There we go. Because once it's in the channels palette, you can call it up pretty quickly. So we've got all of these layers, which will be great for doing edits, but right now they're just in the way of what we're working on. Left mountains, and chuck that one, and let me pause it while I repeat this process about 5 more times. Hold on. Okay, so all of these have been transferred over into the channels palette, and I've thrown away all the empty layers so we can see what we're dealing with. I'm just going to move the properties over for a second because we've got a number of properties. We have, looks like levels going on. We have a hue saturation. I'm seeing, let's turn these off real quick. We'll just turn them back on one at a time. See what's happening. And oh, we've got something in group 1, which has just a whole bunch of stuff off in group 1, or sorry, perhaps just sky curves. Yeah, just sky curves in group 1. So let's take a quick look at what's going on in here. With all these masks, this is great, a great place to start, and looks like a lot of color correction going on in here to get this this pale blue sky, almost an ocean sky, going in on it. We have levels just to tighten things in a little bit. Once everything's said and done, we have all the mountains with more color corrections going on it. That's actually quite nice. We've got the right mountains with another set of color corrections, and at this point we're going to start noticing an issue. When we turn this on, notice how it looks flatter. What's happening is that we're losing what's called atmospheric perspective. Generally, when you have things going into the far distance, they'll become paler and paler and paler and paler and paler. And that's just because of the way that light moves through the atmosphere. We could talk about that in more detail later, but sufficient to say, if you start adjusting everything to eliminate the atmospheric perspective, then you're going to actually make the image seem flatter, which is usually not what people want. So I'm going to leave the right mountains alone and just leave the all mountains on. Because if we turn them both on, notice now it's really dark, which really isn't what we would be aiming for. We've got some mysterious curves adjustment. Let's see where this one's going. Just going to control click on the mask. It looks like right over there. I don't see much of a difference. It's just a color correction. Go ahead and leave that on. A heavy duty darkening. Deselect with Control D, which maybe a little more than we want. I'm going to leave that alone for just now. Looks like more darkening. Let's turn them all on real quick. a subtle change. I'm going to turn them all back on real fast. Oh, we've got, oh, I like that one. That's a really good hue saturation adjustment. An overall levels adjustment. We could just make that a curve. Real quick, I'm just going to turn everything on. See where we are. Yeah, so everything's just getting blacked out at this point. So it's just, we'll leave the sky. The sky curves excellent. So let's do this. I'm going to shut off all of the mountains. All of those mountains. I'm going to leave the hue saturation for the water and levels on. And I'm going to come in, and I like the sky. We're going to create yet another mask. And so I'm going to go ahead and above everything create a new hue saturation adjustment. A new curves adjustment. Curves. Got curves. But I'm going to add to this mask. I want to mask out the sky, so I'm control clicking on the previous mask to get all of that selected, filling that with black, assuming that I have it on the default colors, and control delete. So I won't affect the sky. I also don't want to affect the kayaker, because I believe he's been taken care of. No, well, we can. That's the water. We'll tackle the water separately. Control click, and now I will fill that in as well. There we go. And let's go ahead and fill in the kayaker as well. I know we've got him in one of the channels here. Here he is. Wait. Oh, maybe not. All right. Not a problem. Here he is. Kayaker mask copy. Control click on him. Oops. Control Z on that last step. Load selection. All right. And now just fill this in with black as well. Control delete. I'm going to do it a couple of times so we just get the mountains. Alt click to see what's going on here. Control delete. I'm just going to do a quick thresholds layer on this, adjustment on this. I'm inside the mask, so I'm just going to go to image adjustments thresholds. And now notice we're pure black and white, which is maybe a little too crispy. So I'm going to pull back a little bit. Just a moment. And I'm going to go edit fade on that, fade threshold. Just a moment. And we're just going to fade just so I can check how it was before, after. You know what? I'm not going to do the threshold. Let me undo this just because I want to keep the softness of the kayaker. So I'm just going to go in with overlay mode brush. You'll remember this one from way back. Brush, nice and soft. Mode to overlay, white. And now I can just clean up all of that, and then X to get black, and now I can clean up all of that. There we go. That's working a little better than threshold. Oops, although I should not have hit the head of the kayaker, so I'm going to go back a step. Lasso around the head of the kayaker, Control Shift I. All right, and now a brush. So I Control Shift I after selecting it, which means it's the inverted selection. There we go. So I don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to switch over to hard brush real quick and just pass over the kayaker right here. There we go. So now we have the fuzziness right where we need it. All right. And switch my brush back to normal so I don't mess myself up later. I'll click on here again. And voila. Okay, so now we've got this singled out. I'm going to go ahead and click on the, let me get channels redocked. I've got too many windows flying around. I'll just minimize it. Boop. All right, click over here and we're back on the curves. Let's see what we got. I'm just going to hold down Alt, bring this in. So notice now that I'm affecting the mountains as a single piece instead of multiple piece. And we can see it's a little too crisp up here, so I need to do some adjustments. Let me just try a quick test. I set this to medium contrast, and that looks exactly like what we need. It's just a slight curves. Save one thing. Yeah, I'm going to leave alone Normally I'd pinch this stuff in, but I'm going to leave that alone because it loses atmospheric perspective. Okay, so we've got that. So what's the next step that we need? Let's go ahead and make another adjustment. We're going to do another curves. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key and drag the mask up to the new curves and replace the new curves. So we'll call this mountains curves. And we'll call this everything but mountains. And we're just going to invert this. Click on the mask, Control I. Okay, so now the curves will affect everything except the mountains because the mountains look good. And so what we're going to do here, I think I may want to not touch the sky. Actually, I think the sky's looking pretty good from the sky curves here. So I'm going to Alt click to get in here. B for brush, just fill this in real quick with black. I'll click back out. So now this will be lower half of photo. All right. And now, see, we can pinch in now. I'm holding down the Alt key to see what I'm losing. Not too much, nothing too important. It may be a little bright now. Go in the other direction. Oh my, we can get rid of a lot. Oh, look how crisp and clear that looks now. Before, after. And then I'm just going to do an S curve on this. I think it will look quite nice. So I think now the mountains could use a little more darkening just to match in a little better. So I'm actually going to do this, reset the mountains entirely. I get rid of some of the blue and some of the black. There we go. That's a lot better. And I can cut in quite a bit without losing anything on the sky. All right, now I'm going to apply that S curve again. Not quite that heavy-handed. Just a little bit. Okay, so now we can see that this may be a little too blue. Let me pop in. Well, actually, hue saturation may be easier at this case. Theoretically, we could just come into the blue layer and do an adjustment on here to get rid of some of that brightness. But you know what I'm going to do instead? And you can see it really is too blue. I'm going to come in with another adjustment layer. Hue saturation. And then I'm going to get rid of that layer mask and use the mountains. By holding down Alt while I drag it, I duplicate it. Going to come into my hue saturation adjustment. And come in here, click, and you can see that right away we can get rid of that tint. And you can see that it isolated it for me, which is great. I wouldn't have thought to go there. I'm actually okay with a little more saturation. What I'm going to do instead is a slight rotation. Should we darken it up a bit? No, that's too dark. A little more saturation. And there we go. Before, after. Before, after. All right, so essentially a lot of these adjustments I've just combined into one set. You could go further. Notice the slight orangeness happening in the trees. When you've got like these mountains all separated and all of these wonderful masks, could be useful to go in, but I think that this would be a great go. Just going to click on the top, shift click on the bottom, delete all of these layers. And so I'm going to save a copy. Actually, let me do this. I will use the history duplicator to create a new version altogether. See, and then over here, I'm going to go back to the original. Here we have with the reduced adjustments. I tab these all the way so we can get some space. Tab key to hide all this. We do a side-by-side comparison. I think that this is looking a lot cleaner. All right, so that essentially is the approach. From here, don't forget that on this particular assignment, you'll need to double the size of this, have the edited photo and the Original photos, so you just go to canvas size, lock this in on whatever direction I told you to before, set the width to %, and set it to 200. In this case, it was just 6 inches, so I could have just typed in 12 inches, it would have been fine. And kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. I've got the edited photo and the original photo. I might have these backwards. And you see the water's a lot clearer. You can see that the sky's a lot cleaner. You'd see those adjustments there. So essentially, that's the procedure that I would use in this case. Save it out with the title. This is the correct way to name it. Good job. So yeah, that is my advice for tackling these curves.